All right, so we are now recording, and George, I'll touch on that a little bit more as we get to the bullets. But again, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us again for another meeting on updates to the Season B ice hockey schedule. We met on December 7th and covered in quite a bit of detail the COVID modifications and all those things that are going to be in place for ice hockey this season. And I'm not going to go over those again at this meeting. This meeting is just, again, to cover the new changes that are just primarily to the dates of the season. Then I'm going to touch on some key points that we talked about on December 7th that I said I was getting some clarification for. I think it's going to be some good news for a lot of you coaches on some of the items that I will touch on. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and Whitney will address those, bring those up to me, and I'll answer those questions kind of as we go. Let's start with the ice hockey new calendar. And so you're going to see highlighted in yellow there at the top, the competition season now runs from January 25th through March 11th. So the season now, the previous meeting, I believe we had put out February 1st. We were fortunate enough to get approval earlier than we expected from CDPHE. The original communication from them, was that they wouldn't even come and sit at the table with us until mid-January. I think that what happened is the governor put out some information, kind of put his foot in his mouth on some things around returning and schools coming back to in-person learning and athletics and some of that information. And schools said, well, we already have a plan to come back, or we are already in-person learning, and so why are we not able to resume our athletics? And I think that brought them back to the table earlier, and so we're at a point where here we are now with an approval from CDPHE to begin the season on January 25th, which is exciting news. Not only are we able to get that approval, the date, but we have the approval of the variants. So we have the numbers that we asked for, which is fantastic, and we have the ability to start a week earlier on January 25th. So we wanted to take advantage of that. So the season will go January 25th until March 11th. As George brought up earlier, there's no change to the game number. There was never a change. We've always left it at 13. So we have a 13-game maximum regular season. There is no individual or team game minimum like there has never been for an individual athlete. Again, I'm not going to get into that. We covered it in length on December 7th. The other change is to the practice date. So you'll see that January 18th is the start of formal practice. And again, January 25th is the start of competition. Just like always, 12 of your 13 games must be against your league opponents. Non-league games must be within that geographic region that we outlined at the last meeting. And then you would just need to send me an email to say, hey, this is going to be our non-league opponent. And just so we can verify that it is in fact within that, the two regions, essentially a southern region and the Denver metro region. And you just have to play your non-league games within there. And that the other change that we spoke about on the 7th, only one game against your league opponents will count towards the final standings. One piece there that I will talk about, because it came up, I think, from a few coaches asking about why not two. And I'll just say this: we were able to look at some statistics from the fall and from some other states that have already had their seasons, and the numbers were pretty clear. And these were outdoor sports we're talking about, but on average, we saw about 35%, somewhere in that 35 to 40, average out to about 38% of teams that fielded sports in the fall, that includes football here in Colorado, were able to play a complete season. And so we anticipate that there's a strong likelihood, that in the winter, that those numbers are not going to get any better with indoor sports. We're not going to see anyone in this room that's anticipating playing all 13 games, I think, honestly, is kidding themselves. And so in order to avoid a scramble in a situation where maybe somebody gets 12 games, all 12 of their league games in, and somebody gets 7 or 8, we're just going to make it really simple. And the first game that you play against your league opponent, that's what counts towards your league standings. There's no indication in any of the data that we've seen that shows that every every school is going to play an entire schedule, which is why we asked you to send in how your qualification process will go and have some pieces and some bullet points in there that discuss what you're going to do in a situation where some teams don't get a full schedule in. And so that's why that came back. And we're just going to do the first game that everybody plays against their league opponent will be the game that counts towards the regular season. So I just wanted to clarify that. It came up on an emailed question that I got last week. And so I just wanted to make that very clear to everybody that the first game that everybody plays against their league opponent will be the game that counts towards the official league standings. And so, again, somebody asked, well, why can't we decide? Well, let's just say you said we're the second game we play somebody's going to be the game that counts towards the league standings, and that's the last week of the season. And now you have a situation where that team goes into a COVID quarantine for 10 days, and they can't play that last game. But they played the first game, but they weren't going to count that towards the league standings. And so the coach said, well, I didn't bring any of my players. I brought a reduced roster. That wasn't supposed to be the league game. It's not going to count. So the first time you play somebody, when you walk into the rink, the first time you play somebody in your league, that's the league game. So making it very, very simple.
Justin, this is Ryan Painfrock from Chaparral. Is there any reason why every conference game can't count?
Yeah. So again, I feel like I touched on that, but the reason is because of the data that we've seen, and it's pretty obvious that we're not all going to play. Nobody in this room, anybody that thinks they're going to play 13 games, it's not going to happen. We have not seen any data to show that everybody's going to play all their games. Not one state, not any of our sports with football in the fall. Where every team played every game, it just hasn't happened. And so to think that all of a sudden, now that we move indoors for ice hockey, that we're going to get lucky and every team's going to play a full schedule is unrealistic. And so to avoid situations where now we have teams that have played 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it's all over the map on number of games they played within their league. We're just going to say that the first game's going to count because it makes the most sense from the data that we've seen. We're trying to use data. We're trying to make informed decisions on what's best for the sport and what makes the most sense. And listen, in a perfect year, of course we want all the games to count. But this isn't a perfect year. This is probably the opposite of perfect. And so we're just going to try to make the best of it and understanding that not everyone's going to play all other league games. And that we feel pretty comfortable that everybody will be able to get at least half of their games in. And so that's the number that we landed on, that 6 games will count. The first time you play somebody in the league will count for your league standings. And hopefully,
certainly. So
I understand it's not a perfect answer, but hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I just want to make sure this is clarified. So this is not left up to so even if the ADs from the conference, like we talked about before, have got word from their coaches that they've agreed that they'd like every conference game that they play. We all know it's not a perfect scenario and that some teams aren't going to be able to play all their conference games. But with that, have a strategy in place and like you said, put together from conferences to decide what the qualification or qualifier is going to be for playoffs. And they come together as ADs and coaches and say, yeah, we'd like, no matter how many conference games we play, we want every conference game to count. That's not up to the ADs or coaches. This is mandate by CHSAA. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
You're understanding it correctly. And so we want to make sure, obviously, like I said, the how you determine the qualifier, we want to leave up to the leagues. But we use data here that showed us that it's not going to happen. And to avoid any confusion or a situation where there might be 2 undefeated teams in a league who never got a chance to play each other, whatever it might be, or 3 teams and maybe one of them didn't play each other. We're just trying to reduce the number of scenarios that could come up that are going to cause issues with trying to get this automatic qualifier and with such a reduced bracket that was approved for us. We've only got the 4 teams that were approved in each classification, and playoff berths are going to be at a premium. And we're just trying to limit the number of possible scenarios that could come up where teams have played varying number of conference games. And so that's all we're trying to do here, Coach. Listen, I'm not saying that this is a perfect scenario. I want every game to count. I don't want there to be COVID. I don't want this to be a situation where teams are quarantined for 10 days. In football, you play 1 game a week. In hockey, you might a 10-day quarantine for a team could be 4 games. I mean, that's 25% of their schedule.
Justin, it's George Gwozdecki. I'm just piggybacking on what Ryan just asked you. I'm a little confused because I understand that you said the leagues are going to determine the AQ. But then I also heard, I thought I heard that the leagues aren't really going to determine the AQ. It's going to be just the first game of each. The first time you play your opponent is
They're going to determine. They're going to determine what their process is for putting in the automatic qualifier using the first. Just like we said that 2 would count. Now we're saying 1 will count. CHSAA mandated 2. Now we're mandating 1. So there's no difference. Before we said 2. Now it's 1. You guys have always determined who your automatic qualifier is. Now you're just going to do it with 1 game as opposed to 2. That's the only difference there.
Okay, I think. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because we've got to get through this. And again, we've got to swim Zoom at 4. We only have 45 minutes. If you guys have individual questions, please call me and I can walk you guys through this over the phone and give you some of the reason behind it. But just, again, trust me that we're not making these decisions without looking at actual data and making decisions that we think at the end of the season make the most sense. And that's what we feel like makes the most sense is that it's completely unrealistic that anyone's going to get that number of games in. And so we do feel comfortable with a 6 game, and that's why we set it at 6. But we still want to give you the opportunity to play those games. And we want you to, at the end of the day, the important thing is for kids and student athletes to be with their peer groups back playing the sport of hockey. And that's what's the most important thing. All right, so there's really nothing else to cover in the bullets around the schedule other than the fact that the dates have changed and those key pieces I wanted to talk on. But everything else that we spoke about on December 7th still applies today. So I won't go over a whole lot of that stuff because we've got just 30 minutes really to get through the rest of this. One thing I do want to talk about around the bracket that I want to make very clear. So we have a 14 bracket for 4A and 5A. Let me just run you through a scenario. If, let's just say, George, because you and I spoke last, if Valor Christian is the automatic qualifier from their conference, and the 2 days, we put the bracket out on Friday, and on Saturday, Brian calls me and says, hey, we had a COVID outbreak on the team. We're not going to be able to participate in the postseason. We're going to go into a 10-day quarantine. I will then take the next team. So the second place finisher in that conference will then get a phone call from me, and they will move up. If the second place team is also in a COVID quarantine or maybe does not want to participate in the postseason, I will call the third team, and so on and so forth. And if it's the fourth at-large qualifier that was in a similar situation, the next highest ranked at-large qualifier will replace them on the bracket. So we will replace somebody on the bracket up until the game is played. And so just be aware, we will do everything we can to make sure that all 4 teams, that every game is played on that bracket, and that we have a full bracket to start that tournament. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Additionally, if there is a situation in the postseason where the semifinal, Team A and Team B are playing in one semifinal, Team C and Team D are in the other semifinal, and Teams A and C win on a Monday semifinal. And let's say we're playing, and we're still trying to work out dates with the Pepsi Center, but if on the Monday semifinal on Tuesday, Team A calls me and says, on Tuesday morning, we've got a COVID outbreak, we're not going to be able to participate in the championship game, I will call the loser, Team B, and they will advance to the final. We will not crown a champion from a forfeit. The Pepsi Center, speaking with the Avs, they are going at great length to accommodate us in that arena. It's significant cost financially to them. And so we absolutely will play that game when possible. And so we will bring the losing team from the game that the team. So if Team A and B were playing, A went into quarantine, I will call B, and B will move on into the championship game. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware that we will resolve all resources to make sure that our playoffs happen and that all games take place. So I just want to make sure that's very clear so there's no confusion when somebody comes onto the bracket or somebody thinks, hey, why did I just get a forfeit into the championship game when one of the teams was not able to participate. So I don't anticipate any issues once we get into the bracket. The plan is, and the hope, working with the Pepsi Center, is that we play back-to-back games. So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as an example, to avoid that situation. So I don't anticipate any issues once we actually get into the bracket. But just so you know, that will be the scenario just in case something like that were to arise. I wanted to make sure I covered that in this meeting.
Hey, Justin, Jeff Melnicky.
What's up, Coach?
I don't know if we went over this in the first meeting, but are we going to be able to publish? How are we going to know who that at-large qualifier is? Is that going to be something that we're going to be able to see?
Yeah, you'll see the rankings all year. It'll be public. It'll be the new seating formula where everybody sits in that ranking. Well, you'll be able to look at that throughout the season.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the changes to these COVID modifications that CDPHE required us to have. And I have all of them highlighted in yellow. I just want to cover the changes. And here's the big ones. They did approve us for 20-person rosters. So you will be allowed to have 20 participants per roster, no different. They did not limit us in number of coaches. So that is 20 players. And then if you have one coach, two coaches, three coaches on the bench, you're okay to have that. CDPHE did not limit that. I had a question earlier today on was there a limit to the number of coaches? I didn't put a limit in my variance when I submitted to CDPHE, and they did not come back to me and said that we needed to have one, so we do not.
Justin,
So
quick clarification
Yes.
on the 20. Does this mean, are we talking about a roster for a game, or are you talking about a practice roster for?
No, 20-person rosters for the game.
20.
They can change. So you don't have to have the same 20 throughout the year. You can make changes, but just like you think of it just as any other season as far as the number of players you can have in uniform for each game. So 20 players in uniform for each team. If you have a kid go into COVID quarantine and you need to replace him with somebody else for another game, you're absolutely okay to do that. But when you show up for each game, just like you did every other year, you'll show up with 20 players in uniform.
Gotcha. Thank you.
The big thing here, though, is this approval was for competition only. And so what CDPHE has said is that we have to use the current color dial. I think we're all in orange now around practices. And so in all CHSAA practices, teams must follow the indoor-outdoor guidance for the dial level of the county. I believe orange is 25. It's 25% or 25. And so you would only be allowed 25 people for a practice. I don't think that should be too much of an issue for you, but just be aware that this number, 20 per roster, so essentially you're looking at 40 participants for a competition practice, you still have to follow the dial your county is in. So just be aware of that. If your county is in orange, you're at 25. If you're in yellow, I think that might increase to 50. But just understand that you need to work with your local health department around practice, and that you will follow the color guidance that you are in. So just be aware of that.
Justin, if we ever drop down to red, they wouldn't be practicing at all, but they could still play a game. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, our variance approval is for competition is okay. With red, it was approved in red. And so I think, Brian, what we would have to do is we'd have to call CDPHE and see what we would be able to do, what we would be allowed with practice if for some reason we went from orange back to red.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but right now we're in orange, so you will get 25, which is 5 more than you'd be able to have in uniform for a game. So again, I feel pretty happy with what CDPHE came back and approved, that we would be able to have games played as normal, and the practice would just follow the guidance from the county. Understand that some local health, some county health departments are a little more strict. And I don't know if you guys are having pushback in hockey, but I know some are saying, for a practice, we don't want you to have 25, even though orange is allowed, or counties in orange. You got to individually, your athletic director, you guys need to work, the rink manager, whoever it might be, needs to work with the county to make sure everyone is on the same page around this. Because if the county comes back and says, that they're not going to allow it, that the county is able to do that. They're able to say that. CDPHE has given us the approval to recommend this and to say that we can have 40. But at the end of the day, if your county doesn't allow it, that's just what we have to go with. So make sure you guys are working with them around this, and we'll talk about that a little more later as we talk about the masks and what we were approved for there.
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
Travis at Summit. Yellow is 25 players. Orange is still 10, and no indoors.
So I think and I'll send you something, Travis. We were looking at it earlier in a meeting this morning that said 25 for Orange.
Okay, I'm gonna need that because.
I'll send you where I got that from.
It depends on if your public health is going to let you run like a gym.
Correct. And that's what they've, yes, exactly. Yes, Gentry, you're exactly right. And so they said, when we talked with CDPHE, I think they considered us essentially as a gym. And I think most rinks were doing that anyways, because they were allowing, I think back in red, it was like 10 per room. And a lot of rinks that I spoke with were putting 10 kids on each side of the ice, calling each half of the ice a room. So I think people have gotten pretty liberal with their interpretation there. But yes, CDPHE would consider us in our use of a sporting facility a gym. So you would fall under that gym, which is 25. Unless your local health department is going to come back with something different, but that was their interpretation of it, and that's what we would recommend. And if you need us to sit down and talk with someone from the local health department, we would be willing to do that.
Yeah, or if you've got something in writing you can share, that would be helpful with our public health, I know.
Okay. Yep, I can try to do that as well.
All right, thanks, Justin.
The next thing is just that they asked us to add to this is that, again, just a disclaimer that students, coaches, and volunteers should not go to practice or participate and you can just read that. It's basically if they have any symptoms of coronavirus, they've been exposed to somebody with COVID, they've asked us to just put that into our variant. So I've added that. This is something that was not in the document that you saw on December 7th. Nothing really out of the ordinary here other than to say, if you've got COVID, don't show up. Another piece that they asked us to add was around ventilation. Improving ventilation has been shown to reduce spread in indoor environments. Administrative coach practices should be adopted to promote airflow, open windows, doors when available. Ensuring proper ventilation, including reduction of capacity limits, will help to reduce the concentration of airborne contaminants, including viruses. Again, this was a sentence directly from CDPHE that they asked us to add into this document. Just saying that should you be able, if it allows, try to open doors and windows in indoor environments. So we added that in there. The next piece that I want to talk about is around masks. So we went back and forth on this pretty heavy. And late last night, we got approval that the athletes, while competing in competition, will not need to be masked, okay? Coaches and officials, trainers, any non-participating athlete is still wearing a mask. So officials have to be in a mask, coaches have to be in a mask, players will not need to be masked during games only. Practices, they will be required to wear a mask. And so at a practice, coaches, you'll need to ensure that your athletes are wearing some type of a facial covering, but at games, they will not need to. So we're very, very pleased to be able to work with CDPHE around that. Rhonda did a great job working with them. I provided some information around the concerns that I had, and she really went to bat and was able to get that done. And so athletes will not need to be masked during competition for the sport of ice hockey, but they will need to wear a mask during practice.
Justin, real quick, this is Larry.
Yep.
Do local rules take precedent over
100%,
that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So in some of our counties, they are required to wear masks. And I just found out that there's counties that aren't going to allow wrestling.
Yep.
So the county will determine that. Were we able to get a list of the rinks that will allow that or not so coaches can be prepared? Thank you.
Yes, Whitney and I will put that together. We're putting a document together. We'll try to get that. You guys can update it on the fly to say our masks required? Are spectators allowed in? We're gonna have that document that you guys, it'll be a Google Doc. You can change it on the fly. I do wanna say that does not negate the fact that I do still want the communication, day of, day before with the two coaches and the officials to still let them know, hey, coach, just a heads up, you guys are coming to us tomorrow. It can be a call, an email, whatever it might be. Just want to remind you, here's where we're at. We're requiring masks, no spectators, whatever it might be. I want that communication still to happen with coaches, but we will provide a Google Doc where coaches can go in and update that information for their rinks on the fly to kind of say what they are and are not permitting. So we'll have as many resources and information out there as possible so everyone is in the know on what is and is not allowed. But yes, if your county health department requires you to wear a mask, you will do so. CDPHE has told us that we can play. They're not mandating us to wear one unless your county is requiring it. Similar to, I don't know if anyone saw the Boston University Holy Cross basketball game. The NCAA is not requiring masks for basketball players, but Boston University is. And so the Boston University basketball players in their game against Holy Cross wore a mask. So same would apply here. If your local county health department requires you to wear a mask, you will be in a mask and your opponents will be in a mask. Or if if the school, if the school district chooses to require the kids for that game to wear a mask, but the county doesn't, then, if you guys watch the game, just Boston University was wearing masks. Holy Cross was not. So if the school decides that they want their players wearing a mask, then they can make that decision, the decision that they feel is best for their student athletes. The next bullet point that I want to cover is around locker rooms. We were a little bit unsure of that last time we spoke, and what we talked about.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
That document, that will be available to coaches prior to season, and coaches will know with that. And is that document final unless it's a health department, or if a district all of a sudden says, no, we're changing, how does that work?
Yeah, so it'll just be.
Is there a time frame that, I guess where I'm going with it, a coach can't say, oh, by the way, you got to wear masks. Sorry, I didn't let you know. Is there, you give them 48 hours, 24, what is reasonable within that?
Yeah, so we want coaches to update that document throughout. Basically, if you find out something has changed, we want you to go in there and change the document. Again, I still want that communication. The phone call should still be happening day before, 2 days before, or the email, hey, just a reminder, here is our requirements at our rink when you guys come to visit us. I want that communication still to happen. I think it's important. But we'll have that document hopefully available by the end of the week where you guys can go in and just put for your own individual rinks what you are requiring. If you're allowing spectators, if there's separate entrances for players and spectators, if there's a separate entrance and exit, just those kind of things that will just make people aware of what they're walking into when they come to a facility. But I still want people, coaches, administrators, to communicate with each other. I think that's very important to let people know exactly what's going to happen at their venue. But I just felt like another piece of information wouldn't hurt. So we'll have the document. I also want the extra step of that, that reach out before the game and just as soon as possible, especially if there's going to be a change to what your document that you're going to have online is going to say. So the use of locker rooms, we talked about that last time. What we put out was approved. So basically, they can be used essentially not really as locker rooms, but changing areas. And so they can be used for restrooms, restroom use. I know that was a big thing that some of you said, hey, that's the only restroom available. They will be able to use those for restrooms. And then you can have no more than 5 people at one time in the locker room at one time. So if you cannot guarantee social distance, then you will have less than 5. So you would need to be able to essentially guarantee 6 feet of social distance with those 5 people. If you cannot guarantee that, then you would have less. So each individual site will need to make that determination, but you can use that as a changing area if you need to, as a opportunity to use the restroom. But as we said before, we still are asking that you come dressed, ready to play, if possible. If it's not possible, locker rooms may be used with up to 5 people. The next piece that's new, or I guess I shouldn't say new, but just want to hammer this one home. The scorers announcers box, the home team must assign a maximum of 2 adults for clock and scorebook, with nobody else allowed in the area. They must wear face masks and should wear face shields and maintain as much distance as is allowed in the box area. We talked about this last time. Only 2 people allowed in that area, and just make sure they are masked. They are maintaining as much distance as possible, and we are recommending that they, in addition to a mask, they also have a face shield if possible. We spoke about that at the last Zoom, so I don't want to cover it too much again here, but that was approved. So I just wanted to make sure that I did bring that up. And then the penalty box personnel must be limited to 1 person per team, and they must wear a face mask at all times. No surprise there. And then that person should be a coach or school personnel. But again, we talked about it in the last meeting. Should be. We're recommending that it is, but that we understand that if the school approves someone, a parent, to be in there because of issues around getting some supervision at a venue that's not obviously attached to your school being an issue, then you're okay to do that. But we are recommending that it is school personnel. But if it's not, as we spoke about at the last meeting, that would be allowed as well.
Hey, Justin, this
Yeah.
is Lee from of you. What about the backup goalie? Can you have the backup goalie be in the penalty box wearing a mask?
As the penalty box.
Yeah, I mean, because they're around the team all the time. I mean,
Sure.
so I mean.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, they'd have to have their helmet on, obviously, and their mask.
Yeah,
Okay.
mask. Yep, mask and a helmet. I mean, listen, I think that's okay.
Okay.
If you want to put them in there, I think it's actually a pretty reasonable request, unless somebody else feels differently. I think that's something that could absolutely work.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
So does that make the roster 21 then?
No.
So it's 19 on the bench, 1 in the penalty box, just for clarity.
Uniform. Yeah, you get 20 in uniform. And if you want, if you were going to put a backup goalie in the penalty box to get that door open and closed, you could do that.
Justin, Eric Austin. I may need to double check this. I think that's against the NFHS rules to put a player in the penalty box.
Okay, it might be, Coach. It might be, and not having Joe on this Zoom. Joe, you want? There you go. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I wouldn't recommend having a rostered player in the penalty box, whether it's a goalie or not. Okay, they are a rostered player at that point, and they are not a penalty box person. You run into various problems there, having a rostered person in. And again, you're limiting numbers to 20, so there should be sufficient spot on players' benches that you don't need to put extra players in the penalty box.
Yeah, so maybe that's something that Joe, that we can sit down as a COVID group and just maybe hammer that out. We could probably do it over email. I'm sure that you have some concerns. There might be some concerns that maybe some other coaches have, and we can just discuss that just maybe via email tomorrow, and we'll make a final decision and send that out to the group on the backup goalie. It seems reasonable, but I'm sure somebody can think of a reason why we shouldn't do it. So let's just decide as a group. I'll send an email out tomorrow, and we'll make a decision and send it out to everybody on the decision on that. But again, whoever's in there has to be masked. We do recommend school personnel, but understand that there's some situations where another adult, like a parent, in the past has been allowed to be in there, and that wouldn't change with COVID if the school is okay with it. The next piece that what we wanted to bring up quickly here is around intermission. So CDPHE was pretty clear that we cannot go into the locker rooms as an entire group at intermission. So during all intermissions, players and coaches must go to an area where social distancing can be maintained. So you're gonna have to figure that out at your rinks where that's going to be. But bottom line is they're not going to allow 20 kids plus coaches into a locker room at intermission. Just it's not going to happen. And so we'll just have to figure out a way to find a place in the rink where social distance can be maintained. And that's where you would be required to be during an intermission. So I just want to make sure that was clear as well. We spoke about that in the last Zoom. Nothing has changed there. And then,
Justin, this is
yes,
George again.
yep.
Just a quick thought on that. I mean, there are some rinks that there's no room other than the locker rooms to go. So my suggestion is the players stay on the benches.
And that's fine. You know, I would say in most areas there's probably at least some space, George, where you can around the bench, you know, kind of around the glass, maybe where you can get them a little bit of distance there. You got to be creative, but we just can't have them. We can't have them, you know, packed into a locker room.
We just get rid of the ice cut for now until we get this back to normal.
I don't know if I don't know if anyone would be in favor of.
I mean,
that.
Ice cuts so guys can sit and hang out in the locker room and talk. And if you can't do that, then I don't think the ice gets tore up that much. This level. Maybe
I do. I think the ice gets torn up plenty. I think we need to make sure we keep the two ice clean.
Agreed.
Can we just do one in between? Like a tournament where they second period?
I think we allow, I'm not looking, I think, don't we, to look at the, not having the bulletin up, don't we allow with mutual agreement for one?
Yeah,
I'm okay with both. I'm okay with both. And I think we just coaches need to be creative. You can't go back to the locker room. CDPHE is not going to allow it. And so just find a way we can maintain social distance, not in the locker room during the intermission.
Hey, Justin, Dylan Strom here. Is there any scenario where some of this stuff would change throughout the season? Like what we're talking about with the locker rooms?
No, the only thing, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The only thing I could see that could change would be it getting more strict.
So even if, say, a county goes from whatever to yellow or whatever is lower than that, green, I guess, even if we're like that with the counties, we're still going to do no locker rooms.
Correct. Unless CDPHE reaches back out to us and says something differently, every indication we've got from them is it's not going to change. I don't anticipate that it will. The only thing that would change if a county moved from, let's say, orange to yellow or whatever, would be that it would potentially open them up to more practice participants, but it would not. Nothing we've gotten from them indicates that they would change. I can just tell you right now, hockey was the toughest one for them to wrap their heads around. They brought up a couple of specific situations with tournaments, not only in Colorado but around the country, where tournaments became super spreader events for COVID. And so I'm gonna be honest. When they approved it, I was a little surprised, but very, very happy. And so just understand that. To me, it seems like they might come back and get a little bit more strict on us. And so that's why, again, you're seeing this. I know it seems like overreach on my part on a lot of this stuff. And I apologize if it is. It's not what I want. That's not somebody that I am. My beliefs are not someone that thinks that I should have all this oversight and overreach on you guys and I need to be telling you what to do. But I can tell you that you guys weren't in those conversations with CDPHE and I was. They were not happy, or they were not too excited, I should say, about approving hockey. And so I had to get real creative and very, very specific and put a lot of limitations on what we can do and what is approved to get this through. You know, it's not ideal. It's not a perfect season. It's not going to look like it always has. There's going to be some grumblings. I'm sure you guys aren't thrilled with me, but trust me, if you could have been a fly on my shoulder during some of those discussions and then seen what we have as an end product with players allowed to be 20 players on a roster without masks on and having a season, you'd be patting me on the back. And I'm not trying to give myself kudos here, but all I'm trying to say is that it was a difficult road to get to where we are to get ice hockey approved. And a lot of that credit goes to Rhonda. I don't want to, by no means am I trying to say that thanks to me we did it? But they were not excited, and we got here. And I'll apologize now. Listen, it's not ideal. I don't like it either, but this is what we had to do to get the variances approved. We're going to have to get through it. Coaches are going to have to suck it up. Players are going to have to suck it up. We'll get through this year, and I promise you, we'll be better for it. And the fact that the kids get to be out on the ice is for me, is what it's all about. And getting to play games and be back with their friends and their peer groups, having some structure. Because the last 10 months have been extremely difficult for these kids, and I'm just glad we're able to put them back out there. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions just really quickly if Whitney has them. But again, I've got another Zoom here in 15 minutes, so I'll do about 5 minutes of questions. And if I don't answer one of your questions, Coach, please email me or email me your cell phone number. I'll call you on the way home, or I'll call you tomorrow morning. But go ahead, Whitney.
With games ending on March 11th, JV games?
That's a great question. Somebody said with games ending, I should have touched on that and I didn't. With games ending March 11th, can we continue to play JV games through the state championship? Yes. So not only can you play games, but I'm going to open up. If you did not qualify for the Frozen Four, you can play JV games through the state championship. If you're in the Frozen Four, no, you cannot, because I'm not going to run the risk of pulling a team off the bracket because a JV player infected the team with COVID. I'm just not going there. Not going to happen. If you did not qualify for the Frozen Four, you may play JV games through the state championship. Whatever that date that we land on with Pepsi's Ball Arena and the Avs is, you may play JV games through that date. And I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to allow anyone not qualifying for the postseason to play a JV game outside of their league as well. So if you want to play a non-league opponent in a JV game from the end of starting March 12th through the state championship, you may play a JV game against a non-league opponent to get some additional lower level games in there. I will allow that because you will now no longer have the risk of bringing the COVID, spreading COVID within your team, and then ultimately spreading it potentially to other teams and so on and so forth. So that will be allowed. That was a good question.
Justin, real quick with that, will they have to submit a roster of their JV team, or when a season's done, can varsity players play on the JV, or is it strictly JV and they will have to submit a roster? It would
essentially be, if you have swing players that did both, you could, listen, I'm not going to limit you guys. If you're going to throw, I think hopefully the coaches have enough respect for each other that they wouldn't put a varsity stud out there in a JV game. You couldn't use it. You couldn't, two varsity teams couldn't, just say, hey, we're going to do a JV game, air quotes, JV game to get some more games in. It would have to be a lower level game. You would have to get it approved with me in writing. I'm not going to ask for the roster, but listen, I'm going to just ask for everyone's, we're all, I have the utmost respect for everybody in this room, and I hope you guys would have the integrity to make sure that it was what it's intended to do. I know that lower level games are going to be at a premium this year because of just some teams not fielding teams and the restrictions that you guys have around who you can play. And so I want to give you that extra opportunity, but I just ask that you guys have that same respect and make sure it's an actual JV team that's playing.
Is there a change in period limits per athlete?
Yeah, we'll get all that out. So the question was, is there a change in the period, a number of periods allowed? Yes. Whitney and I will have a bulletin posted. I would say, what is today? Tuesday. I would say by Thursday, the bulletin will be posted. It'll just mirror essentially what a full season looked like. So you will have that. Just a prorated number of periods out. It'll be in the bulletin, and we'll have that posted by Thursday.
Can you drop the pregame officials?
Somebody asked, can we drop the pregame officials meeting? I think we talked about if you guys want to do something via phone call or Zoom before, I think we talked about that. That would be acceptable. But I do want to make sure that there is some type of a meeting with the coaches and the officials before the game that just kind of goes over the protocols. So it needs to be socially distanced. There needs to be masks worn. But if you want to do it with a phone call, or a Zoom on the way to the game, day before, morning of, that's an acceptable way of conducting it as well.
Will videographers be allowed in the rink?
Will videographers be allowed in the rink? I think that's going to come down to what each individual site allows around spectators. Right now, if no spectators are allowed, we are approved for coaches, participants, and officials only. And so no, but if obviously if capacity limitation, I think in Orange it's like 50 spectators are allowed, and if that individual rink allows it, then you would be able to include that videographer in your spectator number.
Are there JV playoffs? If so, what is the requirement?
Yeah, I answered that question with that.
And
Yeah.
then last, why was basketball allowed to add more games and playoff teams with earlier start date for hockey?
Yeah, and we touched on that one at the beginning too. So again, that's everything. This document will be sent out to you guys. I'll send this document out to everybody. Really, the only changes that we have are around our dates. Everything we talked about December 7th, for the most part, still apply. We were lucky enough to get athletes to not have to wear masks during competition. They will during practice. Officials will be masked. Coaches will be masked. But everything else that we talked about December 7th still applies. So I just ask you, if you have anybody that was not on that December 7th meeting, go back, look at that Zoom. I can send that link out again. And if there's something, I hate to rush it. I just don't want to give information out again. And I do have a Zoom at 4 o'clock with swim coaches. So if there is anything that you guys want to talk, Ryan, if you want to talk about some of your questions that you have, I'd be more than happy to get on the phone call with you and discuss it at length. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to agree with the decision that was made or like it, but I'll just give you the reasoning behind why it was made, and hopefully you just understand to accept it. So any questions that you guys have, reach out. I'll answer them. We'll send this meeting out via recording as well. I'll send out all the documents that we showed at this meeting so you guys can review them. I appreciate everything you guys have done. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your understanding. Everything that you guys as coaches, administrators are going to be doing throughout the rest of this year, I commend. We're very thankful for, and we look forward to getting the kids back out on the ice this year for a hockey season. So thank you. That's all we've got today. Reach out with any questions that you have, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Hey, Justin, real quick,
yes.
I want to just say thank you, because I know the work you've done with this, and we wouldn't be where we are today without you. So thank you from the Ice Hockey Committee, and then also thank you from the coaches and all. And again, you've addressed it. It's not perfect, but again, thank you for all your diligence, work, and attention to detail, and we're going to make the best of it. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. And thank you to all you guys. Look forward to a great season. And that's it.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, guys.